everyone. Welcome back to the Minute Women Podcast. My name is Grace.
And I'm Linnea, and we have a very special guest with us today.
A very special guest.
A wonderful human being, absolutely hilarious.
The Queen of the Halifax podcasting scene.
Really?
And comedy scene.
An actual comedian.
An actual
Not
comedian.
like us, like pretend comedians. A real one.
Where we just sit in an echo chamber of our own laughter.
You guys pretty much are. You might not be stand-up comedians.
That's
but you
fair.
are like podcast comedians.
Oh.
Thank you.
Well, there's different kinds of comedians. A lot of people are comedians and they may never do stand-up.
Fair.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
That's fair. Well, we have the Queen of stand-up comedy with us.
Gosh,
She's
that's
here.
Sweet.
Sarah
Hopefully
McLellan.
no Halifax comics are hearing this and going, no, she's not.
It was
Well, they can
funny.
fuck off.
I have a friend who was at Hop Yard the other night when you had your show and was like, had it on like her stories, her Instagram stories. And I was like, oh my God, I know her.
Oh, that makes me feel good. That makes me feel real good.
I heard your whole bit about the problem with your personality is that you have one.
that I have one.
Yeah.
And guys don't like that.
I like that.
They're like, shut up. Stop talking.
You have feelings and opinions. Ew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God bless. That's
yeah.
so nice. Thank you guys so much for having me. This is really exciting.
No problem. The person we're talking to is Sarah McLellan.
Oh, yeah.
The host of the Intoxicated Podcast.
I didn't actually introduce her.
That's me.
I just gushed.
So how much do you know about Canadian history?
Not much.
Great.
I'm just going to be very honest and real and say, like, it was one of those That said, like, if I were to turn back time, I would have paid way more attention.
Yeah.
It's just, like, when I was in school, I was, like, all about, like, art class and,
Yeah.
like, recess.
Yeah.
And recess.
The lunch
The most
break.
important class of the day.
Do you remember recess? It was, like, a 15-minute break. Like,
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if I had recess in high school, but I don't think.
We had homeroom. So we had a
Right.
15-minute break
right.
after first period. That was homeroom. So so it was kind of like recess, but you didn't get to go outside and swing.
I feel like I had homeroom at the start of the day, from what I remember.
Interesting.
I definitely did in junior high. Like homeroom was this. So my junior high was very strange, where we started the bell rang at 8:35. That was like the start of the day, and we
Wow.
didn't get out until 3:00. It was not like a super amazing institution of learning, but like we just like they made you read for the first 25 minutes of the day.
Oh, that's nice.
So the bell rings, and because I guess it's part of Nova Scotia curriculum that you have to have a certain number of reading hours in the day, and so
Yeah.
this is how they did it. They achieved it was like forced
By
reading time in
You
the
know
morning.
what, though? It might work.
You're smart.
Yeah.
It worked for you.
You're right.
Smarty pants
God
over
damn it.
here. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, today, whenever we have a female guest, we like to do a female badass.
Yes.
And today, I think we are doing one of the most like quintessential female badass heritage minutes.
Okay.
It's the Agnes Macphail heritage minute.
Okay.
So that heritage minute was always the scariest heritage minute to me as a kid
It's so scary.
because she tours a male prison.
Yeah.
And they show like these like emaciated, beaten and abused prisoners, and then she's in the courtroom,
Yeah.
or not courtroom, parliament, and she's advocating for prisoners' rights.
Basically a courtroom.
Yeah, and she takes like a I guess like a horse's bridle or something, like a whip, and she like
Right.
cracks it down on the table, and she's like, "Is this normal?"
Yeah, and I never
A great line from a
Oh.
heritage minute. Is this normal?
iconic.
I want
Yes.
to say it all the time now. It's
Is
just
this
like
normal?
Like you like look down and see like a mole on your arm, and you're like, "Is this normal?"
And you have to say it in that with that dramaticness.
Yeah.
I feel like, what's her name? Agnes.
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 I feel like is she kink shaming a bit? Is this normal?
Yeah, right?
Some people are into
She
it.
probably was a king shamer.
Oh,
sure.
definitely. Yeah, and I remember the minute, and I remember not knowing if it was like a whip or something to hit people with, or if it was like restraints.
Oh,
If it was like, because it was like this big piece of like leather
Yeah.
looking stuff.
Very intense.
Definitely didn't look like something that I would want to have to be beaten with.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. True.
Other
True.
things,
Not
maybe.
kink shaming.
Not,
Not
to
kink
and shame
shaming,
anyone.
but it looked a little dirty.
It did. It did.
It's like, I'm not so concerned about the beating, but I think I will get an infection from this.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
open wound afterwards will not be pleasant.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're going to talk about her life
I love this.
kind of from birth to death, and see what her shtick was.
Yes.
All
Love
right.
it.
Now, was she into eugenics?
Probably. I actually didn't see anything specifically about that.
Well, that's promising.
But basically, all female suffragettes in Canadian history were like super into eugenics.
That's what we've discovered.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's viewed as a progressive thing during that period of time, where it's like
was viewed as progressive.
Yeah.
No longer viewed as progressive.
No longer viewed as progressive by most.
Right.
This whole movement basically saying you can like scientifically categorize people, and then from that you can like predict what their children will be like. So, you know, like if you are insane, you should be made infertile, because that would be
Because you're going to have
child abuse.
insane
to
baby.
have a child. Yeah, exactly.
So they were into
Yikes.
that. However, I bet she was into some other really cool stuff.
Pro-
So let's talk about it.
cool stuff.
So
All right.
cool.
The cool life of Agnes Macphail, and I will call her Angus at some point,
Angus?
because
Agnes.
is just such a strange consonant, like
Yeah, it is strange.
order.
Yeah.
But I do, yeah. Anyways, Aggie,
Aggie. Aggie.
Aggie.
Little Aggie. I
Sure.
love that.
Her name is Aggie now.
Now
Okay.
I want a breakfast sandwich.
So Grey County is situated on the southwest flank of the Georgian Bay in Ontario.
It's a pretty area. I've been to Georgian Bay. It's beautiful.
Oh.
That's where the good gin, the
Gin smash
gin
is.
smashes are from. That's Georgian Bay gin.
Ah.
Distinct high rocky ripples in the land are covered with mixed deciduous forests and stands of tall coniferous trees. It's primarily settled by Scottish immigrants in the 1800s, and logging was the main industry. And following that, you know, you cut down all the trees, suddenly you have all these great fields for grazing cattle. So then following cutting down all the trees, you have cattle and sheep.
It's
farming.
basically Catan.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Do you like Catan?
Oh,
We love
We
Catan.
love
We
Catan.
should do Catan at some point. We should do a board game night at the
my-
office.
That would be so fun. I
Yeah.
haven't played it in a while because the friend I had that like had it like moved away from me.
that's the hard part about Catan. Like if you don't, I got my family very into Catan over the pandemic, and now they invite me over to play Catan.
I love that. I would love to have a Catan night.
They're having a Catan night tonight, actually.
Really?
Yeah, with some of their friends. But yeah, that sounds like Catan. We've got sheep, we've got forests, we've got
Wood.
rocks, and
Yeah.
my mom calls the cities universities.
University.
Exclusively, because she calls them
Why?
houses and universities. Because just one time she like messed it up and was like, "It's a university," and it just really stuck. And so we call them houses and
That's
universities.
hilarious.
So on March 25th, 1890, Aggie is born.
She is a Aries. Aries?
Yes.
After Pisces,
Just an Aries.
Just an Aries.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm a March Aries. She's 6 days before me.
Just bringing the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's born into two like Scottish families. So like her dad is a Macphail and her mom is a Campbell. In one of the townships, which is one of the wettest areas in the South Grey County.
Oh,
Wet.
This website that I took this information from is great.
I love
It
it.
focuses on very strange information.
The wettest area.
The wettest area. So her dad's name is Dougalld.
Dougaled?
Dougie.
Dougie and Aggie.
Dougie. And he married Henrietta
Aw.
just the year before. So she's, you know,
Shoot.
the first child. And they started their life together in a log house.
Oh, that's nice.
So the first farm was a low-lying farm, and the house was very dark and cold in the winters. And Agnes remembers that the kitchen was big and attractive, and we children loved it.
Oh.
Love the kitchen. The Macphails stayed in that log home until Agnes was 12, when they moved to a farm nearer to the big center, like city center of this county. This new farmhouse was a brick one and could be more easily heated in the winter, which made Agnes's mother very happy. Dougalld prospered by farming the land, cattle dealing, and auctioneering.
Oh.
Which I love that side gig. It's like number one.
Yeah. 200, 200, 200, 250, 250, 250, 300. Do I hit 300?
300.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Just auctioning
love
cows.
that.
My dad would go to cattle auctions a lot as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he has very
insane.
he's a very distinct memory of going and like putting a bid in on a cow. And then somebody outbidding him, and he was just like pissed as an 8-year-old child. But then eventually, like, this guy just was like, oh, whatever, like, just take his bid over mine, like, let this child take the cattle.
Aww.
But then my dad, like, in retrospect, clearly this man was just being nice, but like as a child he was like, I need my papers, is this real? Like, I need to get the papers so I can get into the whatever. It's like being very serious and procedural about it.
Oh my god, that's so cute.
So Agnes's father didn't believe that women should do heavy work, so like manual labor on the farm. But Agnes did not take to housework with any enthusiasm. She doesn't
Love
She
her.
doesn't like cleaning up after everything.
Ooh, I relate.
She helped her father instead tend and harness animals. Along with the regular family gatherings, the Macphail home was a social gathering spot where groups of men talked over farm politics and affairs of the day, while the women discussed domestic issues and events.
Oof.
Already rebelling against the narrow trap of marriage, Agnes's resolve was fueled in these early days to make a contribution to society, in addition or in place of having children.
My
Love that.
gaydar is
Oh yeah.
beaming.
Oh yeah. You'll go through
yeah.
and like you'll be like, this is one of the hidden lesbians.
I'm
For
also
sure.
interested, like, where did these facts come from? Like, did someone know these things? Because they're like, oh, she really liked the kitchen.
So
That made her happy. How do people know this?
So she was very good at keeping all of her papers, and then they all got donated to an archive. So there's a whole archival collection of all of Agnes's like papers through her life.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if that's just from like an account that she told someone, or if that's
I
like from a
wonder.
diary as a child.
That was really fascinating.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
There's a lot of like stuff about Agnes Macphail at like Library and Archives Canada.
It's so funny because, I mean, Grace just tells me the knowledge, and I just totally trust that
You
it's
just
all
accept
real.
it.
Like,
I
that
know.
was so critical. Like, not in a bad way, but you were like, oh, where is this information coming from? And I'm like,
Yeah.
Grace knows everything about history.
This
It
this
just kinda- it's
specifically is from like the Agnes Macphail like society website.
Grace knows
that
it
seems
all.
legit, though.
But it's from
Yeah.
her like from her collection. Is
Yeah.
like so it's like basically this website is the guide to her collection,
Very
At-
cool.
the archives.
Very, very cool.
So Agnes was the eldest of 3 daughters. Her younger sisters, Gertha and Lily. It's like, who was the favorite child?
Lily.
Agnes, Gertha, and Lily.
Lily has the prettiest name.
For sure.
I wonder if she was the prettiest sister.
And they were raised within an embracing extended family, and Agnes formed strong bonds with the women in her family in particular. Her grandmother Campbell, so like her maternal line grandmother, was a progressive thinker who has come from few worldly advantages, and Agnes idolized her. So she really like came from like quite a poor family, but like made it in the world.
Oh.
Henrietta had the sterling quality of standing by her beliefs no matter what the cost, and illustrated thrift and unending hard work for her daughters. For Agnes, her father Dugald was a man of like quick insight and wit. She admired his sociability, but wondered aloud after his death whether he had lived to his fullest potential or if family responsibilities had limited him.
Oh, that's sad.
Which is like a hard thought to have. It's
That's
just like, if
yeah.
he didn't like, if he wasn't a dad, would he have gone on to do bigger and better things?
That's a heavy weight
I know.
to
Yeah.
carry as a kid.
But also, like, men can go up and do anything during this period of time.
that's
Like,
also true.
having kids doesn't hold back a man during this period of
Very
time.
true.
No.
Yeah.
That's not as much as I would assume
Yeah.
a woman, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was really like, she stood up. She was different in that she stood up to people.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, I think she's,
Fascinating.
like, very aware at a young age
Wow.
of, like, her family dynamics and, like, circumstances.
It's crazy.
Apparently, emotions were kept to a minimum in the family, but Agnes loved her parents with a fierce admiration and recognized the qualities she had gained from her parents. So she wrote, "Perhaps I owe to my father the ability to get into Parliament, and I owe to my mother the ability to stand it when I got there."
Oh, I love that.
I like that.
Agnes
So
attended
nice.
many different local schools throughout her childhood. When the Macphail family moved, she attended an all-girls school. And then over her childhood, it was a routine for Agnes and her younger sisters to walk for miles to get to their local one-room schoolhouses. But they all had their own determinations, and they were all really focused on education. Lily and Agnes both wanted to teach in school, and Gertha excelled in music and wanted to become a music teacher.
Oh.
So that's cool. I mean, they all want careers
Yeah.
Yep.
during, like, the very early 1900s.
But also seem to have the support from their parents to want
To
to
go do
pursue
it, yeah.
those careers. Yeah,
Mhm.
which is cool.
Yeah.
At the age of 14, Agnes was delighted to find out she had passed all her high school entrance exams and foresaw the unfolding of her future as a teacher. Her parents, however, denied her the permission. So actually, I guess they're not super supportive.
Oh, I
Oh.
take that back.
A little bit of both. A little bit of both.
But it took her 2 years to finally convince them for her to go. So I guess they probably need her around the house. They only have 3
Yeah.
daughters. So I
Yeah.
feel like if you do need labor on the farm,
Well, and she
She's
seems to be
needed.
the one interested in that.
yeah, it seems like she was the one helping her dad all the time.
And she was the oldest, so that
Yeah.
was probably like their first, you know, kind of attempt at like trying to control a daughter
Yeah.
in a weird way.
So Agnes eventually moved away from home to attend high school in 1906, and she attended the Owen Sound Collegiate Institute. There, she excelled in all of her classes and was exposed to the social divide between urban and rural girls. Determined to gain a profession outside the home, Agnes carried on in 1908 to attend the Normal School for Teachers in Stratford, Ontario, where she boarded with her aunt and uncle. When Agnes graduated in 1910, she landed her first job, which was about 4 miles east of Port Elgin in Ontario. I don't know where Port Elgin
No
is.
idea.
But, and she earned $500 a year.
Ooh.
Rolling in it.
Yeah.
Imagine.
I wonder how much that would have been worth back then, though. Like, would 500 have been
It's probably a
considered a
decent
lot?
salary.
Yeah, you think?
I'm thinking
Yeah.
like 20,000.
Yeah, I'd say it's like
interesting. Okay.
lower end of livable
Yeah.
wage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her next appointment was in Kinloss, a town located halfway between Walkerton and Kincarine, Ontario.
No idea.
We're in the middle of buttfuck nowhere in Ontario.
We're in like
Lots
this
of
is-
rural Ontario.
This
Yeah.
is where like Letterkenny is filmed.
Yes. It was here that Agnes was encouraged to voice her political opinions during gatherings of farmers in the local hardware store.
Nice.
I love that.
He's like, I'm here for some nails
Yeah.
and a piece of 2x4. And she's like, but have you thought about politics?
Have you thought about unionizing?
Yeah. Do you know your rights?
I love that. She's really speaking out.
They're
Like,
like,
amongst men. I love that.
yeah, they're like, oh, it's Agnes again.
I just love that it's in like Canadian Tire though.
Yeah. Like, literally what I'm picturing like the local like home hardware.
Yeah.
And Agnes just walking in.
Yes. In a power suit. I picture her in a power suit, although I'm assuming she probably wore a dress of sorts.
Her experiences in Kinloss opened Agnes's mind to the possibility of doing more with her life. She traveled to Oyen, Alberta to visit her aunt and uncle and taught summer school there for 6 months, but was discouraged by Albertan weather and so returned to Ontario.
Love that. She's like, nope, not for me. I'm
Yeah.
out.
So her next appointment was at Peg's school in Sharon, Ontario, and it was here that Agnes's career shifted dramatically. Agnes taught school children for a total of 10 years, and then in 1920, her political career began. In Sharon, she was increasingly active in the Ontario agricultural cooperative movement. So for farmers, cooperative movements tend to be like, they're very big in the prairies where you would have like grain unions.
Right.
So
Okay.
instead of us all individually selling grain, what we'll do is we'll add all of our grain into a silo and we'll collectively sell it, and then we all get our share.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And that protects you because if grain doesn't sell, for
Yeah.
instance, you can all save it collectively.
Right.
And that kind of like helps you out in bad years.
Right.
Okay.
Versus like you as an individual may not be able to save grain.
That makes
Right.
sense.
Like you may not have the silo or whatever,
Mhm.
so you're just gonna have to like distill it into rye or do something with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that happens a lot, especially after like the Dust Bowl
Right.
during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
But those are starting to pop up throughout Canada, and they're a really big political movement, and they shape a lot of our left-wing politics today.
Really?
Yeah, so like
Huh.
the NDP party's roots are in like United Farmers Co-ops.
Oh,
Huh.
wow.
Yeah.
Very
I didn't know
cool.
that.
So she joined the local farming organizations and the United Farmers of Ontario, which is the UFO.
UFO!
Out of this world.
A farmers' political, educational, and social organization that was formed in 1914. In 1919, the UFO won a landslide victory in the Ontario provincial election, and 2 years later, Macphail was nominated to represent Southeast Grey County in the House of Commons as a member of the Progressive Party, with which the UFO was then affiliated.
That's cool. Like, because she's 100% being nominated by male peers. And
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
huge at that. I mean, that's still huge today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely get, like, she certainly has to overcome a lot being the first woman elected to Parliament and being the only woman elected to Parliament while she's there. I
Yeah.
don't think she ever is alongside another female MP.
Ooh.
But I was kind of impressed by she is quite welcomed
Yeah.
to that space by certain people. Like, obviously
Yeah.
not everyone,
Right.
but there are people who are very
Right.
progressive and happy that she's there.
Yeah. She has supporters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Macphail was the only woman elected to Parliament in 1921, which was the first federal election which women had the right to vote.
Okay.
So we're picking up from what we learned in the Nellie McClung
Yeah.
and the Emily Murphy Heritage Minute, which we've done episodes on. You can go back and listen to those. But as a result, we now have women able to vote and women able to run for a seat in the House of Commons. Women are people.
Enter Aggie.
Enter Aggie.
Feminist warrior. Love her.
It's kind of like a trilogy of Heritage Minutes. Like,
Yeah.
you have to do
Yeah.
Nellie first, and then you can do Emily to understand the legacy of Nellie, and then you can do Agnes. As the legacy of Emily.
Right. All these women are trailblazing.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
other women.
Definitely.
It's really fun. And like they're doing it like essentially alone, which is so like
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's really like this like group of 5 women who did a lot. It's very criticized today because they were also quite like racist and like had obviously like eugenicist beliefs like we talked about earlier, but they are the first women who have the ability and like the resources at their disposal and the time to advocate for women's rights.
right.
And we learn from history,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially as like trailblazers who were a minority. Mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Different. And it's just like what we know now is different than what we knew then.
Yeah, and I think like we talked about with Just Watch Me Pod, they came on when we did Emily Murphy.
Yeah.
They were like Kate was saying like you have to acknowledge what they did
Yeah.
while also simultaneously acknowledging the bad.
Yeah.
Like it's
Learning
just a
from the bad,
conversation
yeah.
you just have to keep having
Yep.
Yeah.
versus just ignoring.
Yep.
it.
Right.
Um,
And it doesn't discredit the good work that they did in
Yeah.
history. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they were still trailblazers. Like
Yeah.
they still did so much. It was just like you had said earlier, at the time that was progressive thinking.
Yeah.
mhm.
And that's changed, thankfully.
The good stuff they did led to even better things.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
In
the
the
way I
future,
always
so.
think about it is just like all great human accomplishments are achieved by humans, and no human is without like significant flaws.
Flaws.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true.
So it does like it's why every celebrity, if you like deep dive on their shit online, like you're gonna find stuff that's bad.
you will find stuff. Absolutely.
Except Keanu Reeves.
Except Keanu
Oh,
Reeves.
He's a perfect man.
What a perfect man.
He's a perfect
He
Canadian
truly
man.
is.
If
If
anything
anything
do a
comes
Keanu
up-
Reeves episode.
Oh
It's
my
Just watch
God.
me.
we just watched it. Yeah.
Are they fans too?
They just cover a lot of popular culture
Canadian
and
stuff,
Canadian like celebrities.
Like
so.
when we went on theirs, we
that.
talked about Kim Cattrall.
yeah, Canadian.
She's a secret Canadian.
She is very.
They should
I
do
secret.
didn't know she was Canadian.
Yeah,
Oh my
she's-
goodness.
I didn't either.
She's like, I feel like she's born in Canada and she has Canadian like citizenship,
And
but like
she
a lot of her
lives-
career
yeah.
and life was outside.
She lives in
Canada.
Canada now.
Yes,
that
for the
we know
pandemic, she
of.
returned to Canada.
Right. Oh.
Yeah, but anyway, other than Keanu Reeves, everyone is flawed.
Yeah, I have to wonder if Aggie would be canceled if she did all this stuff in this day and age.
Yeah, I don't know. And granted, I didn't see like anything that was like Agnes was involved in the eugenicist movement. Like I didn't
Right.
see that for her specifically.
Right.
Right.
I just wouldn't be surprised if something came up.
Right.
So if I've left that out, that's just my own ignorance. But
Yep. Yep.
So she served as a member of parliament for the riding of Grey South East until she was ultimately defeated in the 1940 election. So that's 19 years in the House of
Wow.
Commons straight.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Macphail had allies and admirers in the House of Commons, but she also faced criticism from fellow MPs and journalists who opposed her stance on political and social issues. She entered politics to represent the farmers in her region, and throughout her political career, she also championed the rights of minors, immigrants, prisoners, women, and other marginalized groups. Some critics suggest that Macphail's support for these groups was influenced by communism. Others implied that her judgment had been affected by her sweet nature and womanly sympathy.
Oh, for fuck's sakes.
I don't know what's worse. I don't know what's worse.
Yeah, what one is worse? Holy smokes.
And she dared to criticize militarism and imperialism at a time when this was, like, it was so bad to be opposed to those things that you get accused of treason. Like, she was accused of treason because she was saying, like, Canada should not fight in a war.
Yeah. I like that she seems to be passionate about things other than women's rights.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, you know, when women are breaking any glass ceilings, you know, it's about women first. And I feel like she came in and she was like, I'm just a person who wants to talk about the farmers and like how like these are my main focuses.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I'm a woman, but like that's a sidebar. Like,
she just happens to be a woman. She's fighting for human rights, not just women's rights.
Yeah, where when you see like Nellie McClung and Emily Murphy, it was because it needed to be about women's rights and about like, you know, we are women, we are persons, like we have the right to vote. Yeah, and I feel like now with Agnes, she's at the point where that's not the key reason why she's there, which I think is so cool.
And it's one of those things where, like, as a minority, you're expected to just be everyone of that minority's voice.
Yes, that's right.
And it's just, like, so unattainable for, like, she's like, I can't speak for all women. I'm sure that's not specifically what she's saying, but, like, it is one of those things where it's just, like, the first female, like, the thing she's most known for, other than being the first woman elected to the House of Commons, is her work with prisons.
Yeah.
Like, that is the thing that she's known for, which I think is cool. Like, it's not like she went up there and, like, exclusively talked about women's rights.
Yeah, because at that point she didn't need to. You know what I mean? She was able to just be a member of parliament who was able to talk about the issues that were important to her and like her. Right, that's just so cool.
That is so cool. She's badass.
Yeah, she's cool. So Agnes's introduction to the House of Commons in 1922 was accompanied by grand displays of chivalry from her male colleagues.
Curious about that.
Though the messages were mixed, she got a bouquet of roses on her desk, and she found out later it was the result of a lost bet. So I guess like they made some kind of weird bet, I guess, about her getting elected.
That she wouldn't get in.
She wouldn't get in. It's like, if she does get elected, you got to send her like a bouquet of roses.
And they're like, ooh,
no way.
It's like, just like boys running around the House of Commons.
They're like, you gonna buy eggy flowers
with no shoes but socks on, just Being the only woman in the House of Commons at the beginning of her career, Agnes attracted a lot of attention from men and women. She befriended many men on both sides of the House, but had a few staunch opponents as well. Many men resented her invasion of their sanctified parliamentary space, and it took a lot of effort for the unorthodox Agnes to be accepted by many women as well.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a huge thing,
just like
right?
indoctrinated women.
Yeah.
lesbian.
Yep.
Agnes tirelessly worked for her rural constituents. She denounced the high tariffs that benefited manufacturers at the expense of farmers. However, her sympathies were not only for rural workers. Like I mentioned earlier, she fought for a lot of disadvantaged groups. She, specifically to Nova Scotia, even though she was accused of communism for it, she criticized the government for providing subsidies to the British Empire Steel Corporation while ignoring the plight of miners in Nova Scotia who suffered low wages and poor living conditions.
Oh.
Yeah. Hashtag
Did
Cape
you
Breton
know?
mine disaster.
Cape Breton was like the hotbed of communism in Canada.
Did you
It's
know?
true.
Yeah,
Did you know? J.B. McLaughlin, that's his name. And he like met Lenin and stuff. Like he went to the like red. Oh yeah, he was there.
Stop it.
And he was like the leader of the Communist Party. Cool guy.
Wow.
Before communism was like really about like
really uncool.
hurting up people and killing them.
Oh my gosh.
Before communism got really uncool.
Yeah. It was just edgy.
Yeah, it was just like edgy at the time. Yeah.
It was like the fascists in the beginning, you know? It all sounds like a good idea.
Yes. I love this. I love this for us.
Abort mission.
The poor conditions and precarious circumstances for the working class drove Agnes and some of her colleagues to promote a cooperative movement that would protect the interests of farmers and industrial workers. In 1924, Agnes and some of her colleagues from Alberta left the Progressive Party to form the Ginger Group.
I love that.
No.
Were they all redheads?
When neither
The original Spice Girls.
That's a group I would join. She was my favorite.
Yeah.
Ginger, for sure.
just 5 clones
Right.
of Ginger Spice. When neither the Liberal nor the Conservative governments seemed capable of responding to the Great Depression in the 1930s. What?
That's just funny that a bunch of ladies were like, both of them suck. Can we please, like, we need another option.
The Ginger Group allied with the League of Social Reconstruction and various agrarian, labor, and socialist groups. They created a new organization, which was the Co-operative Commonwealth Federation. The CCF promoted nationalization of key industries, so like the nationalization of healthcare and things like that. Welfare states. So this party becomes the NDP.
That's what I was.
yeah.
That's what I
That's
was feeling like.
So this is
Ginger,
the origin story.
orange,
Orange, ginger, branding.
Yes.
Bam.
1,000 points alike coming
Yeah.
together. We should go back to calling it the Ginger Party.
For sure.
I love that.
Just call up Greg Meats thing. But how about this? You might have
The
more
Ginger
edge
Party.
if
Yeah, like you'll definitely bring in some people.
you'll get all the redheads.
Absolutely.
They're a minority.
They are.
So Macphail was a founding member of the CCF. However, when the United Farmers of Ontario withdrew from the CCF, Macphail was forced to leave as well. She continued to associate with members of the CCF afterwards. In 1938, she began attending caucus meetings. She rejoined the CCF in the 1940s and represented the party in the Ontario legislature. One of Agnes's greatest accomplishments in her life was the reform of the Canadian penal system. In 1923, prisoners at the Kingston Penitentiary rioted. This prompted Agnes to investigate the conditions of the prison, and what she saw there shocked her and sparked her campaign for prison reform. So that's what you see in the Heritage Minute.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For years, Agnes pushed for change. She argued that prisoners should be reformed and educated, and that corporal punishment should be reduced. Her recommendations included more outdoor time and exercise for inmates, mandatory education for illiterate inmates, and the introduction of prison labor, which is an interesting.
Did she just want them to work and maybe feel a purpose?
I get it. Like,
Prison labor is interesting because obviously in the United States it's just like the continuation of this like slave industry. But it can be good where you have prisoners learning trades.
Right.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they can make a salary, which they do not have access to until they leave,
Yeah.
Right.
which is
like
cool.
in Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, literally that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, or
Yeah.
even like it's like money for them to spend at the canteen and stuff. Like,
Yeah, your commissary.
yeah.
Yeah. At the canteen.
The canteen.
She also recommended the appointment of qualified superintendents and doctors who had been trained in penology, I guess, which I guess is like the study of prisons,
Okay.
Okay.
and psychology.
That's
Ooh.
probably a good idea.
Yeah.
It's like people should have training.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That would be important.
It's like, guys, is this normal? Like,
Is this
this dude's an
normal?
idiot.
Yeah.
Although she had several supporters, her efforts were blocked by the Conservative Party, which was in power at the time.
Typical.
However, when the Liberals came into power in 1935, they established the Royal Commission to investigate the penal system of Canada. In 1939, the Penitentiary Bill recommended 88 changes to the penal system.
Because of her?
Yeah.
All because of her. And then they wound up being implemented after the Second World War.
Right.
So about 6 years later.
Take some time. But I mean, she started it.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Over her lifetime, Agnes made many long-lasting friendships with men both at home and on Parliament Hill.
Mm.
Friends.
I This guy's name, it like every time I see it, I think it's Farquaad,
Oh,
but I
no.
don't think it is. It's like Farquhar.
Farquhar?
I guess so. Oliver
Farquhar?
is his last name,
Let's
so I'm just
call
gonna
him
call him
Oliver.
Ollie.
Ollie, Aggie, and who's the other person?
Oh, it was the dad.
Dugald.
Dougie, Aggie, Ollie.
So he was a young neighbor, and a childhood friend, and a huge
Oh.
supporter of Agnes during her early campaigns, and later he became her political protege.
Oh,
no way.
Yes. James Palmer became Agnes's campaign manager and good friend. During Agnes's campaign for penitentiary reform, she began an association with E.B. Jolliffe.
Jolliffe.
Jolliffe. I don't know. And that turned into a close relationship with him and his family. She was also close with J.S. Woodsworth, who is somebody else we have covered in a Heritage
That's
Minute.
cool.
It's the Heritage Minute no one remembers.
Which one?
Yeah.
It's like a bunch of people sitting around the table, and there's Mackenzie King as Prime Minister, and he looks like Winston Churchill.
It
Or
is.
Mad-Eye
I
Moody.
swear that it is. It is. Yeah, it's the actor who played Mad-Eye Moody in my head. It will forever be.
Oh my gosh.
Agnes was not one to openly discuss her private life, because she's a lesbian and it's illegal at the time.
Oh my
But it
gosh.
is well known that she never married. Agnes did have many admirers. Before the First World War, Agnes was said to have been engaged to a guy named Bob Tucker, who was the boyfriend of my youth, she said. But they
Oh.
did not marry, but remained instead close and loyal friends until his death in 1948. Robert Gardner was a significant man in Agnes's life as well, both politically and personally, though she refused to marry him. But he also remained a faithful friend until his death.
Interesting.
So, as you probably not surprising, Canada's first woman member of parliament was a self-professed feminist,
Yep.
which is evident.
Yeah.
In addition to her vocal support for farming women and female workers more generally, she founded the Elizabeth Fry Society,
Oh.
which is like still like
What?
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, and it supports women in conflict with the law.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
that's super cool.
She's also friends with Nellie McClung.
Of course.
She's also supported the famous five who like petitioned for women to be recognized as people and get women into the Senate. Macphail was a outspoken advocate for gender equity and strove to end legal discrimination against women, including modifying the grounds for divorce. She continued to support women's rights when she became a member of the Ontario legislature in 1943. So Macphail loses her seat in 1940 to like the Liberal candidate. And for the next few years, she struggled to make a living.
Oh,
She lectured in Canada and the United States and wrote for the Globe and Mail, and then ultimately campaigned at the Ontario legislature. In 1943, she did return to politics when she was elected to the Ontario legislature as a member of the CCF. And there were two women who were members of the Ontario legislature at that time. She only held the seat for 2 years, though, before she lost in the 1945 election. She was then re-elected in 1948, and she continued to support farmers and industrial workers, prison inmates, and women. Macphail's final political success was the passage in 1951 of Ontario's first equal pay legislation, the Female Employees Fair Remuneration Act. She had long lobbied for equal pay legislation. Despite the limitations of the act, which Agnes herself criticized, it was a significant step towards eventually getting equal pay for women.
Wow.
However, shortly after this success, Agnes lost her provincial seat again in 1951. She continued to work on projects dear to her heart, including a report for the status of women in Ontario. However, she struggled with ill health and limited income. So that's the thing. Like, even though she's done all this great, amazing stuff, she doesn't have a husband. So she just, like, has only one income as this, like, single woman with no children.
yeah.
Wow. And she just never gave up to you, so she would get, like, kicked out and then, like, keep trying and wow.
Yeah, you're basically, like, a freelancer.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
you just
she's a
gotta, like...
Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Angus died on February 13th, 1954, and she's buried in Princeville, Ontario, among her family. Her work and memory have left an indelible impression on the people and politics of Canada, and she has been commemorated in every possible way.
Yeah.
So there's biographies, children's books, plays, sculptures, photography, historical plaques, cairns and signs, building dedications, and constitutional changes. Wow. Which is a pretty big one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. You should have led with that.
Yeah.
The results of Agnes's time in Parliament are still felt in many levels of the Canadian government. Agnes Macphail fought hard for equality foremost. She worked to bring about reformations of penitentiary government and regulations to increase women's rights and access to divorce. She spurred disarmament and anti-war discussions and strove to break down prejudices based on race and class by living as honestly as she could and speaking out against injustice at every turn. Canada, as we know it, has been shaped in part by this remarkable pioneer.
Yay, girl power.
I love Agnes.
Yeah.
Agnes
Wow.
is like
She's
in my
badass.
top 10.
She's
like,
badass,
she's not
for
a bad
sure.
person.
I had
No.
no idea she did that much. Like,
Yeah.
that's insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like her being the first woman in Parliament is like the least of her accomplishments.
And like the prison stuff, like it's she should have more minutes.
Oh yeah,
I-
we should make another one about her.
Oh,
They
yeah,
should
we
revisit.
could.
They should revisit and like go into like all the other issues that she tackled.
Yeah, like Heritage Minutes revisited.
Ooh.
Specifically, I think we do need a minute of her going into a hardware store.
And being like, so boys,
Speaking
what
of
are we
Canadian
talking
Tire.
about today?
We
I
need
would
that.
love that. I want them. Like I want.
She
them
comes
to
in with the
do-
Timmies. It's like drunk history. So she rolls in like her traditional like dress, but she rolls in with a thing of Timmies and a pack of smokes, and she's like, "All right, boys, let's talk politics."
Yeah.
And I
Meet the farmers where they're at. And they are at Canadian Tire.
I just love how dedicated she was to like her career and like the
Yeah.
issues that she was tackling, and like I love how it's just like she had male friends but like never married or had kids. Like she literally just refused that life.
Yeah.
That was probably you were probably so pressured to do that as a woman back then, you know, to just get
We're
married and
still
have kids.
pressured to do it
Still,
today.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's very
and I
true.
mean, I'm jokingly saying that she's like a lesbian, probably, but like maybe
Maybe
I don't know,
or maybe not.
or maybe
Or
not.
maybe
Maybe she's
not.
just truly that devoted to the work. Who knows?
Yeah.
Either option is fine.
Yeah, either option is okay.
The divorce stuff is interesting too. I'd love to know more about that. Like,
Oh yeah, the history of divorce is like very interesting
Yeah.
because it's one of the most restrictive parts of a woman's life is that you need to have like a court has to say it's okay for you to leave your husband.
right?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and like if you do leave, like you could get a divorce, but it's like you leave and you have nothing. Like you're not entitled to anything.
Right.
So because it's all under his name. So like Nellie McClung and others, they like fought to get women 50% of the estate when they
Yeah.
divorced and stuff.
Right.
Like Emily Murphy was really big on that as well.
Yeah.
Did you know that the first divorce happened in Halifax?
Ooh, like the first in Canada?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I learned that when I was reaching for the quiz. the great Canadian quiz that I did. I actually did really well, but we still didn't. Our team still didn't win. But yeah, I found that out. It happened here in Halifax, apparently.
Yeah.
Get divorced. Don't stay in relationships that you're unhappy in. That's just what
Get divorced.
pro-divorce.
Well, again, thank you, Sarah, so much for coming and being on the show. It was a great girl power episode to have you on for.
I'm
so.
honored to be part of this one. I learned a lot. I felt like I walked away with some new knowledge, which is what you guys are doing here on Minute Women. You want to
Yeah.
educate people and make it fun at the same time. So thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Oh, yes. And thank you to all our listeners who have showed up for another episode of the Minute Women podcast. We appreciate it always so much. So thank you.
Yeah, and if you haven't gotten enough, you can go to our website, minutewomenpodcast.ca. You can find all of our social media links there, the link to our merch store, which is the best way for you to support the podcast right now. All of our episodes get posted there. We're also on YouTube now. So
Welcome to the club.
thank you. Yeah, so it's just audio. There's no visual, but all of our back catalog is there, and it's great if you know someone who is like hearing impaired. There's auto captioning on the YouTube, so you can read our podcast if you would like.
Yes, that's awesome.
But yeah, until next time, have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.